maybe I should sit more.
Good to go. Awesome. All right, cool. Hello, the internet. I'm Dan McPhee. I work for Obsidian Entertainment. I was one of the narrative designers on Outer Worlds.
Hi. Should I have also said hello, internet? I didn't know we were. I'm sorry. I shouldn't make fun of you first thing, but it really surprised me. Hi. I'm Kelsey Beachum, also a narrative designer. Also currently working at Obsidian Entertainment. Only worked on the Outer Worlds DLC. Probably I'm more well known for my work on Outer Wilds. And also, I can unhinge my jaw like a snake and swallow a burrito whole.
Very tempted to ask you to prove that, but I suppose this isn't that kind of
Do
task.
you have a burrito?
We'll get John in here. Yeah, so I suppose it would make sense to start with sort of how we got to where we are, because they're wildly different stories and probably not applicable to anyone we're talking to. So great. So I started at Obsidian as a programmer doing network programming for Armored Warfare. And when they started spinning up the Outer Worlds, I thought, that looks kind of fun. Let me try that, because they were hiring for writers. And I had done some like random sci-fi writing, and I always wanted to kind of work on writing in games. So I shot them over an email, and they let me take the test.
Always wanted to kind of work on writing in games. It's that kind of passion we're looking for in the industry, Dan.
Mm-hmm. Everyone needs to be more like me. Just do all the things. And it worked out. And then I wrote for that game, and then went back to programming.
Honestly, this explains so much of our conversations and how, holistic approaches. You can't replicate my path into games, I don't think. Maybe you could. I wouldn't recommend it. I started out working in editing and publishing, so completely different field. And then, as my partner pointed out today, I can't say no to working on projects. And so I was asked to do some writing for kind of punching up a script for a game at one point, and I said yes to that, of course. And then the next game I started working on was Outer Wilds. And then that won some awards and got some attention. And from there, I kind of made my way into games as a career, because I did not think you could support yourself doing creative writing for a living, Dan. That was my assumption.
And mostly right. Very few people can. Yeah. So one of the things I guess I kind of wanted to ask was sort of related to like how we got here. I don't know if everyone is like this, but like for me at least, there were a couple of games that really made me want to do this job, specifically for video games. Like one of them was BioShock, which I don't think you could really tell effectively outside of the medium of video games, because it's very much about interaction. So what about you? Are there any games that just made you jazzed to write stories in games?
I mean, if you want to ask me specifically, are there games that made you want to write stories in games? I will say yes. I will say it was Metroid Prime, and I will say that it was because I looked at the Chozo writing and I went, I could do that.
And then you did.
Which is rude to say out loud. But, it was like, I think it was until, like Gone Home, I think was the first time I had played. My brother and I grew up talking about game design a lot. Mm-hmm. And obviously I was always, because I just wrote as a hobby just my entire life. And my interest was always in the story being told and how it was being told. And Kingdom Hearts was very exciting to me at the very beginning when I was in like, 6th, 7th grade. How dare you? Close. How dare you, sir? Yeah, you're basically dead. Anyway. It excited me that cutscenes could be cinematic and stuff. And then it took me a while to kind of... Gone Home was the one my brother sent me. He was like, hey, you need to play this. You're really going to like this. And it made me realize that rather than super cinematic stuff and cutscene heavy stuff, I'm more excited by games that lean into kind of player-directed storytelling. I don't know, it just really gets me. And Gone Home was a really good early example of that, even though it's a, walking simulator.
These are bad words. Terrible words. No one should ever say them, because they're all just stories. I don't know, one of the big ones for me. Like I'm always looking for games that like use the fact that it's a video game to really hit it home. I'm playing through the remaster of Nier right now, and it reminded me of how, oh my goodness, how great that game was to experience the first time it came out, because of just the way that they crafted that story, which it would be very hard to do in like a movie or a book or something like that. Because they really mess with you as a player of a video game.
I do love that we can now have enough genre conventions established in video games that we can mess with them and bend them in fun ways, not just to do it for like, for the sake of doing it, but because it can be a really useful tool for us to play within that framework. I will say, have I ever pitched you on my idea for making a short film that's the same, like we treat that the same way we treat video game tutorial intros? Where it's like, fade in from black, this is a movie. Just over-explain it. This man is the protagonist. In a moment, he's going to say something. Brace yourself. Use your ears to interpret the sounds from his mouth.
A woman walks in from off-screen with like an arrow pointing to her, just saying love interest.
Yep. And that's then like good. The time of day and light changing indicates that time has passed. Because I'll be honest with you, I have very little patience these days for tutorials.
Same.
A game that I really enjoyed playing, but hated the tutorial for, Deus Ex: Mankind Divided. I'm not trying to shit talk the game at all. There was, especially in fairness for me as a new, I don't play a lot of shooters.
Yeah.
And so I was doing a lot of new things and I had to like write down like, all right, this is how you're going to access your menu and stuff. Because otherwise I was accidentally like lobbing grenades at people. But they take you to an entire separate thing that's like, hey, like now you're on this side screen and now you're going to, you can path through this stuff and it won't count. And it's like, that part's nice, but also like, it just feels very like maybe just make the stakes lower, but then that kind of does ruin that. Maybe there's not a way to do that.
Maybe just don't as heavily hold my hand. Like maybe make some assumptions that I can critically think for myself.
I do love that the most recent Mario games have like they grab your hand and they're just like, I've got you, buddy.
That's a
please.
different audience. That's fine. Actually, the Deus Ex series has been all of their tutorials are like that.
Oh, no kidding.
Even like I actually for a podcast, I went back and played the original Deus Ex, and one thing that surprised me is how just from a mission design and a narrative standpoint, how much they hold your hand. The entire time there's a guy on your radio in your ear telling you about all of the things you can do in a level and making it very hard to actually discover something for yourself. It feels like you've got a checklist to go through.
You played Mankind Divided?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm only asking because once you kind of get to your apartment, like occasionally my boss or whatever, whoever he is, I can't remember his name, he's checking in with me, being like, where are you? You got to make it into the office. That was the thing I was least interested in doing. I was running around the city trying to get into all these places that I'm like, I'm probably not supposed to be in here, but then sometimes they'd let me, they'd let me in anyway. And I'm like, oh man, not supposed to be here. Definitely do not have the talent to be here.
Yeah.
And yet that felt really good. And it felt good to like encounter quests and side things and be like, I could just do this for a while. But yeah.
It's nice to have some agency in what you're doing. I think it's nice to feel like you figured something out. That's the one thing I really appreciate about the most recent Prey, is the whole game feels like a playground. Just like big brain time.
I wondered if Prey was going to come up.
Yeah. I could talk about that game for another 2 hours. But we shouldn't, because we're talking about stories in games.
Also, I still haven't really played it, so
I'll avoid spoilers.
Yeah. And you just have to talk to me for like the next 40 minutes of our lives. Lord knows I don't need that, McPhee.
Okay, so for the next 39 minutes,
oh god, talk to me about character creation.
Oh boy.
How do you approach creating characters?
Oh my goodness.
How do you create these monstrous beings? How are you screwing it up that bad? I'm so sorry. Don't know why I'm sassing you publicly.
Let's take an example from like the Outer Worlds. Actually, Zora is a good one. So I tend to go into things with, like, I tend to treat narrative design as kind of like a mechanic like any other, like right alongside systems design and economy and weapons and RPG and stuff. There's a thing that your narrative design needs to do, like it needs to serve a function in the game. And for me, a lot of the times, the first question I ask is like, why does this character need to be here? Like, are they just for story? Are they just for like, it's a guy in the corner who just has hilarious things to say? Well, for the major ones, it's all often like a mix of multiple different goals. So there's a character in the Outer Worlds called Zora Blackwood, who is the second-hand person of one of the factions, the Iconoclasts. And the reason that she exists really is so that the guy who's actually leading it, Graham, can be just a total nutcase. Like, he can go so far into that direction specifically because we added Zora to the game to ground him and provide players a way to work with that faction without having to really buy into the, really drink the juice. So
It's usually Kool-Aid, I think, but
I don't like Kool-Aid. It's a tragedy. I know. I'm a
it's
terrible.
actually,
human
now that I've said that, I'm not sure it counts as juice.
being. So I started with her. I said, okay, well, this is a person. Actually, started with he because it used to be Braxton, a lieutenant, and said, okay, this person needs to be super grounded, very logical, needs to make sense when they're talking to the player. Like they're going to be talking to the player right alongside Graham, who's doing all this philosophist mumbo jumbo and trying to sell you on the grand theory of the universe and stuff. So I need a person who's just like, yeah, we need to eat, my dude. We need to go get ammo out in the wilderness. Like this is ridiculous. So for me, it always starts with something like that, some kind of goal or like a motivation, a singular thing that grounds them. And then it just blossoms from there.
Oh, isn't that lovely?
Mm-hmm. Like a little flower.
Yeah, I think if you're designing kind of any aspect of story without an eye to what it's supposed to be accomplishing, you have gone wrong somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I say that, and it makes it sound like I don't occasionally, I would say run into the office, but I suppose we're all remote. So like furiously ping a coworker and be like, what about this really dumb thing that we totally don't have to do, but could be super fun. But like for the most part, I mean, these are the things you obviously have to be thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's just a matter of like, what's the most fun way to deliver that information?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who is this? God, especially if it's like, okay, if it's like really, kind of did that a lot with Outer Wilds, actually. That's probably a good example that I can talk about right now, at least. That, like, the time loop stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of stressful in a lot of ways. It's stressful for a lot of people. So part of that is like, okay, how do I not make this experience terrible for the player? And then two, like, what's a fun way to kind of engage with that?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's like, okay, if you're getting like a really morbid information from this character or whatever, really existentially depressing information, then we make them a lot of fun instead. Or, if it's more, like Ryback gives you information about like the ancient aliens that run the solar system and stuff, and like that's fairly dry in places. So Ryback is like terrified of being in space. I mean, you have kind of these, but they're all out in specific areas because they're specifically like they are the character to talk to about particular like story through lines and subjects. So there is that.
How did I'm curious how Probably Carl came to exist.
Oh my god. Probably Carl was, I'm so glad you've asked. I'd forgotten about him, but I can talk about him. He is in the first DLC for The Outer Worlds, which is Parallel Gorgon. I came on fairly later on that particular game, and Harry said to me, like, hey, we need a merchant out here, and he should further a bit of the story of what Spacer's Choice.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm still thinking of the second DLC. What Spacer's Choice was doing in the area, like what happened here. And I was like, okay, how tragic do you want it? And she was like, probably not as tragic as you're thinking, which was a good call and a good thing to know early. I was like, all right, well, he needs to be, fun. And I think we maybe knew that he had been taking the stuff, the drug that, gradually makes you go crazy.
Bit,
yeah. I think that's not spoilers at this point, but now I'm like kind of nervous. Dan asked me, so this is his fault. Yeah, and so it was kind of just like, what's a fun way to engage with someone who's clearly kind of lost their marbles a little bit? And I liked it being kind of a gradual reveal. Like the first part, it was all like, what's a fun way for this guy to get your attention?
Yeah.
And I wanted to play with the whole like, psst, over here, like it's urgent. Like it's not urgent. My concept for him was vaguely like post-apocalyptic Billy Mays. And once I hit on that, it was so easy to write this guy. And then I gave him, okay, because you and Paul, I'm never sure between the two of you who to blame more for Martin. Yeah, you're already laughing.
Yeah.
I'm furious about Martin.
Paul refuses to not. He says it to me. He refuses to take credit for it, and I also refuse. For Martin Callahan.
So I'm mostly blaming both of you. The guy in the original,
On Groundbreaker.
The
Moon Man.
You just cannot help him, and it really distresses me on just a profound psychological level that there is nothing I can do to get him out of that mask or make his life any better. So Carl has a specific vendetta against the Spacer's Choice Moon Man because I was furious about that
nice.
particular line.
Nice,
so that was
nice.
just me reacting to something that as a player I was like, how dare you?
Hmm.
I didn't mean to make him quite that bonkers, I guess. But then at one point we realized if he hated the Moon Man that much, we had to add reactivity in, like if you come up to him wearing one of the Moon Man helmets. And he just loses his marbles. And the guy we had in for that was, oh my God, he was so good. Sean Beachum, I think is it Beachum?
Yeah.
Sorry, Sean. Sean was tremendous as
He's
that
awesome.
character. So yeah, sometimes a voice actor just absolutely like takes what you wrote and runs with it. Same with oh no, I'm gonna blank on his last name. Oh no, this is the worst. Because I adored working with him. He was just tremendous. Actually, everyone on the second DLC. Yep. So like the guy who did Birdie.
Black Hole Birdie?
Yeah, Black Hole Birdie.
I don't remember
it's
who it
Billy. Was. Oh no, oh God. I'm gonna have to tweet it later just because I feel so bad I can't remember. I'm doing the same with Cedric, but both of those, I mean, first of all, he was Birdie. It was incredible. Oh my God, I opened up that first like audition file and it was the one where it was like, you know, incompleto. And like, I've never heard a man wink before.
It's always nice when you get a voice actor that just already knows the character. That just nails it the first take. We had a couple really good ones. That was how Zora was. Sumila Montano did that, and she was just awesome. She was perfect. Makes our job a lot easier when they already know the character when they come in.
Well, it brings a lot to that. I don't know how much you've actually been able to talk to Cedric, but oh my God, I'm literally the worst. I have to go like now write them a letter of apology, genuinely from the bottom of my heart. Like, man, I am so sorry that I blanked on your name, but I'm doing that, and I'm humiliated. I'm genuinely. This makes me so sad. I failed them on a personal level, and I'm very sorry. But the actor who did Cedric, I mean, sold that character. Because I knew writing Cedric, I was really taking a risk there. Because I was like, all right, the dialogue's good, like it's solid, but like because it's going to be read out loud, especially, like I need this guy to be that kind of charismatic that, you know, you realize he's definitely got something on you and he's dangerous and you shouldn't be talking to him, but damn it, he's really charming. He just kind of makes you like him anyway.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he brought to that performance. And I was, my God, that was a hard guy to cast too, because you kind of were like, I mean, you've got X number of lines that you kind of have to go off of, but man, you nailed him. And now I owe both of those people an apology.
Do you have like a voice in your head when you're writing a character like that? Can you hear them?
Sometimes-ish. It's usually, for me at least, it's not super strong. I knew how I wanted certain lines to come across, especially for like Cedric and Birdie in particular. But then sometimes it's a matter of like when I'm listening to like files that they've sent in, I'm hearing different voices and I'm like, oh, like they got exactly the read on this that I was hoping for. So they're in that character space. And then sometimes, very rarely, it's the voice. And I'm like, oh dang, like that's exactly the thing that I wanted. And I didn't, you know, I'm usually not hard locked in. I know some people are like, oh, pick like an existing like celebrity and like write in their voice or whatever. And I've never done that.
Same. It's always a delight to me. So I don't really have a voice in my head usually, but it's always a delight to me to get an audition that I never would have thought of. Like this actor brought something that is a completely different character and it is perfect. And it's just like, thanks for doing my job for me, man. That's really nice of you. We had that on there was a minor character named Captain Irion who you could find on this asteroid thing. I'd written him originally to be this sort of Zap Brannigan-esque kind of guy. Like he had like 10 lines, so whatever. Like if I'm going to write a caricature in 10 lines, it's going to be something like that. But we were having trouble finding someone to actually do it. And then one of the voice actors who did a different character for us at the tail end of his session, we were like, hey, you want to try this? And he read the lines and came up with his own character for it. And it's just perfect. He nailed it.
That is tremendous.
So
I do like that an awful lot. Like for major characters especially, I usually have a very specific like feel, I guess. And maybe that's
Yeah.
the best way to say it, is I don't have a specific voice in my head so much as a feel.
Yeah.
And as long as somebody comes in and nails that feel, it's great. And
Yeah.
then sometimes you can hear somebody's voice and you're like, okay, maybe the timbre is a little off. Maybe this is deeper than I expected. But when we fill those things out to send off, I do a lot of staring at the sheet where they're like, what kind of voice do you want? I'm like, audible would be good. Male. It's really hard.
Yeah. I don't know if this happened to you on the DLCs at all, but there's also a side of character creation where I just get handed a thing where I'm like, some designer has come up with some kooky situation somewhere and they've already placed a character and they're just like, do that. And I don't know, like I like to be more involved earlier on in the process, but every once in a while, like there was one place on Monarch where that really worked out really well because because here's the thing, there's this room, you go down an elevator, there's a room under a bridge, and what was handed to me was, in this small room, there is a woolly cow, a robot with a chef's hat, a guy in armor with a purple scythe, and he's just like doing stuff. And this room is stocked full of food and stuff. And I was handed this room with a terminal in it, and they were like, hey, can you write the logs in this room to just explain what's going on? If I had been involved in that process earlier, I probably would have just nixed the whole thing. Been like, guys, this is stupid. This is absurd. Why would you? None of this makes sense. But because I was restricted, like I had to make it make sense, I ended up writing a really cool thing, and I'm actually really happy with it. So I don't know. Every once in a while, I just get handed something out of the blue in a vacuum, and it turns out okay.
I do think it's a big skill to have, a good skill to have as a narrative designer, to take something that's like, we need this from a game perspective, and then you're like, there was something like that. The one I always point to is on Outer Wilds, which was the Nomai and the Sun Station debate, because they're acting completely like this goes against literally everything they stand for as a society. They can't do. But maybe they could, because then it's like, okay, all right, let's say they didn't entertain this idea. That's a huge thing, and suddenly now I have this really cool piece of their history where they had this really like thorough debate about it. And like, I say thorough debate, and it sounds really, really boring, and that is why I had to make them like fun, science-loving, like pun-telling space dads. But yeah, I don't think we would have come to that point. So that's kind of what I mean sometimes, is like the restrictions of those rules can be, or like what gameplay requires or what have you. Sometimes that's really nice because it takes me to a place that I'm not expecting to go with something, and it works really well.
Yeah.
I will say, I do have a beef, Dan. I do have a beef with when I'm asked to use narrative not to like explain or it's not to support like a different game element. It's to explain it. It's to justify why it's there. And that drives me absolutely mental. They're like, hey, can you just explain why this is a thing? And I'm like, oh boy, geez, why did you think it was a thing? But you can't say that to people.
You can always, they can set up whatever ridiculous scenario that they want, as long as they can put an NPC in the room with lines that explain it.
Oh my God, I'm so tired of talking to everybody to get my explanations. I'm so tired. Please just let me walk in and understand what it is.
Maybe put up a sign. Maybe there was, God, I don't remember who it was, but someone was talking to me about a room that they had to write where there were like robots in charging stations. And they needed an NPC to explain that the robots were there to be charged.
No.
And we're like,
no.
You can see they're being charged. They're in charging stations. You could accomplish this thing with a 2-word sign that just says charging station on it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Or just show them charging. I mean, there are a lot of ways to do that aren't add more words. God.
And a whole nother character.
Anytime I'm saying, hey, what if we did this with fewer words? It's not because I'm lazy and bad at my job.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it.
So easy to overwrite. It's so easy. And I was telling Connor the other day that like when I go back through and I edit myself, I'm usually looking to like have a lot of things because I have too much fun with it. And it's like, all right, well, we gotta get rid of some of that stuff, man. I don't know.
The other side of it to me is, no matter how minor it is, that character's got a history and like motivations and stuff.
Right.
Like it just starts exploding in my head. There was this tiny character that ended up being a lot of work for us, which was Huxley, this like airheaded runner for the Iconoclasts.
Mhm.
She was originally supposed to just be someone you met during one of the other faction's missions. Very briefly, she's locked in a closet. You get her out of there as part of doing the mission. Whole thing was just supposed to be silly and fun. But then like people liked her and I liked her, and so we just worked her into several other quests, and it just gradually spread. And then at the end, when we were doing VO, we were like, wait a second, this child has like 200 lines. What have we done? We don't have children actors. Oh no. that was a pain to record. Turns out adults can't do children real well.
That is a tough one.
Yeah. What are you gonna do?
Cry about it, probably, if you're asking me seriously. Some gentle weeping and then getting on with my day. Sob into my morning coffee. It's fine. It's all fine.
It's just a little spice for the coffee, that's all.
Recording via like sitting in on those from home has been wild.
Yeah.
Because it's always when my cats want to act up.
Oh yeah. I love recording VO.
Oh yeah.
I love being there. I love directing people. I love helping out. Everyone's having so much fun.
I love it too, but I'm always afraid that I'm like over directing because I don't want to give them too much context. But then every now and then someone's like, "Sorry, what?" I'm like, "Don't worry about it."
Yeah.
I love that. I love it when I get those as like localization questions where it's like, "What does this mean?" I'm like, "It is literally nonsense, my friend."
Make up words, you'll be fine.
Like, we don't understand the rules for tossball. Like, no one does.
That's the point.
That's what's good about it.
Club.
I also don't understand tossball. What are you talking about? That means you're doing it right. No, man. I do love it when you've got like a minor character that comes in and you do get to do like a fun, goofy one-off thing. It can be easy to get too many of those in there, and then you're just like, all right, here's this. Even for those, like I just want a reason. I don't have to even be told it. I want to be able to intuit a reason that they're in the environment.
Yeah.
So if there's a convoluted backstory about like how they were sent here by their boss to pick up this like spy espionage thing, and like, oh, that was sent there from because they're trying to, pay off their family debt, so that just like oh my god, I don't care. I love quests that get you like invested first, and then they start gradually revealing like, oh, by the way, here are all of these implications that this has, and like here's why it's important to this person. Love that so much, my dude. Was Huxley the one where she got trapped in the closet and you could make like a raptidon noise at her?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, that was part of the dialogue options. You could pretend that you were a raptidon. That's also one of my funniest dumb dialogue options in the whole game. It was put there by the designer who stubbed that conversation out. I think that one was Mark. And you go up to the door and you knock on it, and she says something like, "Oh no, I hear boots out there. Is someone out there?" And you can immediately respond, "Oh my god, it's a talking door!" And then the conversation changes from there. You can like your companions can egg you on, and it's a whole thing.
Unfortunately, a lot of my sass lines, like my like gut instinct for writing player responses, they tend to be so like sarcastic or sassy that people will go through and like tag them with the dumb line or be like, "Hey, you should add dumb to that." And like, oh no, I don't know what that says about me. Like maybe my sense of humor is real stupid.
It took us a long time to nail down what dumb dialogue was specifically for the Outer Worlds.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, because originally like it was just supposed to be like, I don't know, like 2 IQ orcish dumb, like use fewer words and stuff. But then we were talking about it and it was like, yeah, that's kind of fun, but also like specifically for this setting, it doesn't feel like having that as a ship captain would be super great, especially with the amount of social situations you get into.
Inspires confidence.
Yeah, so we tossed around a couple things. The thing that eventually got us almost all the way there was I sent them a link of Charlie Day from It's Always Sunny doing his like trash can thing where he thought that trash, you burn it and it goes up and makes stars. And then Mac's like, oh, I don't know enough to refute that. So that got us pretty close, and then we kind of narrowed it down from there. We were just like, okay, you're not actually like a stupid person. You just have a different understanding on things, and sometimes you react to things differently.
In general, tone can be very hard to nail down, and I love having not just having those touchstones of like, hey, here, this is a good example, but specifically, all right, tell me about this. What specifically about this thing is working for you, and what in it, if anything, should I not go for?
Yeah.
I've been doing that a lot with tone documents lately. And I'm just like, it is this, it is not this. And I find that can be really helpful for narrowing that down. But also it just takes a ton of iteration.
Yeah. That is really good. We didn't really do much of that, and we should have. Oh well, what I could have, should have. We got there in the
That
end.
popular catchphrase that you have.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
That's true. I'm trying to think. So there was something you said earlier about explaining a thing that exists. I feel like that these days is generally half the role of examinables in games, and I wish it weren't. I'm trying off the top of my head to come up with a really good examinable.
It's really
recently.
hard to pull off the whole like in BDRS thing, because the temptation is always to write it. You have to write it so that the player isn't just like, what the hell is this? Because that's not a fun experience as a player, obviously. But then you also have to do the work of like, all right, but these people were not writing it because they were like, the player will come along and we'll need to know.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. I love anything where that kind of stuff is at least minimal, if not done away with, just because I know it's a ton of work. I didn't do it super well with Outer Wilds, but I at least tried to be like, they wrote stuff down, like that's their language, and they're writing down either like meeting notes or like communicating across distances, so there's a record of it. Tried to do that as much as possible, just because we even technically had audio logs, even though we didn't do voiceover, but there were like not tapes, but like recordings that then like capture stuff in the moment versus they're writing down. Do you know what I mean? Like I call it's the whole like the castle problem. Or if you like, God, what's that Lovecraft story? I can never remember the name of it. But it's that bit where it's the guy's writing in the journal and he's like, oh no, the thing is here, it's dragging me away. Like, all right, Lovecraft, settle down.
You're writing as you're being dragged along the floor.
Because it does, our whole discipline does have to obviously broach, they're kind of bridge. Is that what I'm saying? Bridge the gap between between an actual story and then,
Yeah.
But I guess, I don't know, maybe not everything needs to be explained that hard. Maybe we give the players a little more benefit of the doubt that they're not big old dum-dums. I don't know. It's just a thought. It's just a thing I've been thinking about sometimes in my brain.
My favorite ones are just the ones that are stories. Just like stories you find that you don't necessarily need, just like flavor stuff. I love things like, I'm glad you said meeting notes, because I love things like that, where it just totally makes sense to be down on paper and use that to help tell something.
I'm real into diegetic storytelling, man. Like, don't get me started on diegetic tutorials. Love it. That's probably perverse. I'm very sorry to the LudoNarraCon audience.
Internet.
This will not be the first time I say this tonight.
There's also like, I like little
the
day
last
job.
time. Sorry.
This will not be.
Keep going. I beefed it on the logic.
That's an interesting one. This will not be the first time. That's some timey-wimey time travel.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a bunch more. I get so many like tweets and emails and stuff from people, and they usually involve some sort of time travel joke. And I'm like, yes, I get it. I know. Worked so long on that game. Been multiple versions of time travel, McPhee. Like, we went through all these different iterations, and I'm like, all right, how's this gonna work? And then I had to figure out a way to explain a very fanciful version of what macroscopic quantum mechanics might look like. I majored in English.
Ain't that just the way? Half our job is figuring out stuff we never learned.
I mean, it is fun. I get to go down like rabbit holes of research, and it is a blast down there. But then also you have to like come up for air at some point and be like, I should maybe like put this in the game now.
It also means we have very concerning Google histories.
Yeah,
I think mine will maybe get me arrested. That's fine.
For sure. I'm trying to think of like the least bad things that I have searched lately, and even those are a bit not good.
I had to learn a lot about the merits and practicality of cannibalism, especially when dealing with cryogenically frozen people when I was writing the Hope stuff. I had to learn a lot about that. I didn't have to. I wanted to.
Yeah, why the
'cause
hell didn't I get a call from
I
you?
wanted the stories and didn't know.
Yeah, I probably wasn't working there at the time
Yeah.
either, because you guys made it after I used to be the editor of for the Cryogenic Society of America. It was a fun job. It just didn't actually involve freezing bodies like everyone thought.
Oh.
I thought we should get, speaking of environmental storytelling, I thought we should get a giant refrigerator, put that out in the main room, and then just padlock it shut and then refuse to talk about it.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
That's exactly the sort of thing that, you know, because you're walking in, you kind of expect a certain amount of, and then there's that kind of insidious, you know, well, what do they do in here? Oh, we don't freeze people. Also, don't look inside the fridge. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
That is a flavor of environmental storytelling I really enjoy in games, where you don't actually know the answer. Like, you just get to see something and imagine it and make it up in your head.
That's half the fun. That's half the reason there's ever like a community around stuff too, because then fans come up with these like really wild theories. That's actually why we deliberately have not confirmed a lot of stuff with Outer Wilds. I don't want to tell people explicitly what's happening because I really like that other people have their own interpretation. Shit, dude, the end of the game, the creative director, my older brother, Alex Beachum, and we're of two different opinions about how to correctly interpret the ending sequence. Or like parts of it anyway. Obviously, we're aligned on the overall large important bit.
Yeah.
But like that in and of itself was fun because that kind of made us approach it with this design mindset of like, okay, like let's just make sure we leave it open to both interpretations.
Yeah.
I think there doesn't have to be a definitive answer as often as we go for it. Also,
I agree.
Also, we always do that thing now where it's like we cannot let the player be confused, or like the player can't, not even confused. It's just like they can't at any point like not know what to do.
Yeah.
And that was so hard to design for with Outer Wilds, because you have to kind of convince the player like, hey, that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to screw this up.
Yeah.
You can go do whatever you want. And that's so weird to me because I feel like it used to be in games that I just did whatever I wanted all the time. And now it's like, I don't know, is this bad? Am I going the wrong way? Like,
yeah, games used to embrace ambiguity a lot more.
Yeah.
A lot more.
We should get back to that. We should get back to that.
All right, let's make a game. Let's make a very ambiguous game.
Is this? Oh boy. I mean, I think we still have to clear it with the studio.
Oh
first.
Man, stupid laws.
Yeah. Well,
I completely forgot I was going.
I meant to razz you at some point about. Oh no, go ahead.
No, let's see something you said about an examinables triggered.
Was it audio logs? Was it me sassing you about audio logs?
No, although they are very good and I like them.
They can be very good.
Okay. Bad audio log.
Oh no, I think I've already sassed so many. I can think of them, but I've already sassed so many people. Super long ones that I have to play at a moment where I'm not here for an audio log.
Yeah.
I hate that, but I don't love it if. Do you know what does it well for me? Sort of. I don't love all the Subnautica audio logs, but I do appreciate that they get me in my like habitat.
Yeah.
And then I see the radio and it's flashing at me and I'm like, okay, this is good, because I'm not actively being chased by something or trying to like, you know, panic swim out of a cave to get oxygen. It's a good space where I'm like, and now it is time for a narrative thing. Yeah. So I always really appreciate in games that do have narrative pickups throughout the world that play automatically on pickup. I appreciate it when they're in a space where clearly there's been some thought there. Yeah. Like there's a long hallway I have to walk down. Yeah. I had to talk about that I did a game that was in VR, and that was part of it, was working with some other devs who had not really worked that much with story before, and with other writers, and to be like, hey, the thing is, like, this will take time, this VO, and you can't like lock your character in place in VR like that because it feels so bad. Yeah. Which meant that like for cutscenes we had to be like, all right, I guess we trap them in this elevator for a little bit. And you don't want to just be, you know, going up an elevator, but I'm like, I need X amount of time for this emotional beat to happen. And so in that way, I feel like, I don't know, the best situations are always going to be for anything voiceover, I think are always going to be when Area's working really closely with you to make sure, you know, you have that space if you need it. Obviously it's not always super critical, but
it's pacing. It's just pacing. And it's surprising like how often we forget about that very basic technique in games, because like games are so often a thing you want to just throw everything at the player at once and get them always moving and always doing things. But sometimes like taking a stop, like taking a breather, is really important.
I mean, or creating the space for the player to take
Yeah.
a breather. I love that, like sitting on the park benches in Hollow Knight.
Yeah,
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that he doesn't immediately hop back up as soon as you're done. Like it's whenever I'm ready to continue, I'll get up. Love that a lot. I don't know. I just like that is the fun of narrative design, right? Of writing for games as a medium. Yeah. We were always going to come to this, Stan. This was always going to happen. I see we have 5 minutes left, so
gosh,
that does seem to be pretty much on track, because you like players determining pacing, and that was, I mean, Outer Wilds is the big obvious example of the things that I've done in terms of like making sure not only, you know, just encountering things in the world at a good pace, but not too many together, but also grouping things, you know, in relation to one another, and hiding, you know, they say hiding, but like placing, literally like the only thing we could control was where narrative pickups, or elements I should say, were physically placed.
Right.
And so like that was how we were doing pacing, but it's still completely player controlled. And it's the game where I spent the most time thinking about player experience on, besides maybe VR.
That's an interesting one, because one of the big difficulties with pacing in games is the fact that the player can just stop moving whenever they want. But you guys have a built-in solution to that problem. Player stops moving. Well, I shouldn't spoil anything. Time runs out.
Let's go with that one.
Yeah. That's fun. That's a really fun one.
I mean, it's certainly not intended to like punish players for not moving forward. But yeah, I mean, there's that sense of urgency there that's kind of naturally, versus you have the games that are like, oh no, the army is definitely coming. Like, yeah, it'll come once I get that power up, huh? I know how this works.
And you are going to stand here forever if I want you to. Doing the same looping animation.
I'd like to see us take that into account more player-based. I don't know. Grounded's doing a great job of that right now, which is what I'm working on. So mostly.
Super exciting things coming, internet. Watch out for them.
I can't wait. Love it. Love that game. Cool. Well, thanks for coming to my house and taking up space in my chair, Dan.
You're welcome. Thanks for providing this chair to me. Thanks for kicking the cats off the chairs.
You did. You almost got Nova instead of me. She's doesn't know a ton about game dev, but she's cuter. So she has that going for her.
She's got moxie.
Nice. She's vicious. She's a little murder beast. But no, cheers, guys. Full internet contingent.
All of you out there who are contingents.
My brain freaked out for a minute. Look, it's Saturday.
I swear to God, we're writers. I swear.
That's like 9/10 of it right there. Is like I use all my good words up during the week.
Yep. True. The weekend is not for a word good.
We word good. Such good words. But no, for real, if you tuned in, thanks so much.
Yeah, this is cool.
And if you didn't tune in,
what the heck?
Jesus, like
and they
why?
Can't even see you do that.
I know, but everyone watching saw me do that, and that was.
Let's spread the word.
They'll know in their heart of hearts
next time
that they did a good job.